I heard the slap of liquid before I understood what I was seeing. Red wine arced through the dining room light and struck Mrs. Halden across the face, staining her pearls, her silk blouse, the white tablecloth beneath her. For one suspended second, nobody moved. Not the guests, not the waiters, not me, and not Daniel Halden, who stood in the hallway just outside the private room, one hand still on the brass handle, watching his wife with the kind of stillness that comes after something breaks. "I asked you to stop," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. That was what made it worse. I'd only been working at the hotel for 3 weeks then, 26 years old, newly promoted to events manager because the last guy quit mid-shift and never came back. The Grand Marlowe liked to call itself elegant. Mostly it meant old carpets, expensive candles, and wealthy people speaking softly while they destroyed each other. I was supposed to step in. Security, apologies, damage control. Instead, I watched her. Elena Halden stood at the end of the table in a dark green dress, shoulders straight, breathing carefully through her nose as if anger itself needed to be managed. She looked mid-40s, maybe a little older, but in the way certain buildings look older, expensive, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Her hair was pinned up loosely, one strand fallen near her cheek. Her wrist still held the empty wine glass by the stem. Mrs. Halden sputtered first. "You unstable little mother," Daniel said from the doorway. That single word flattened the room. Elena turned then, finally noticing him there. Something flickered across her face. Not shame, not fear. Something sharper. Disappointment, maybe. As if she'd hoped he would arrive sooner, or not at all. Then she placed the glass on the table with absurd care. "I'm done," she said. She walked past me before anyone else found their voice. I caught the scent of orange blossom and rain-on wool. Her shoulder nearly brushed mine. She didn't look at me, but her hand trembled once at her side, then stilled. That should have been the end of it. But the next morning, she was in the hotel lobby reading a book beside the fireplace like none of it had happened. I stopped so abruptly one of the bellhops walked into my back. She wore jeans, a cream sweater, glasses low on her nose. No makeup that I could see. No armor. Sunlight from the tall windows rested over her crossed legs and the pages in her lap. She looked softer there, but not smaller. I should have kept walking. Instead, I approached with the kind of confidence young men borrow from inexperience. "Mrs. Halden." She glanced up. Those eyes were darker than I remembered. "That depends," she said. "Are you here to escort me out?" "No." "Then call me Elena." I nodded too quickly. "I'm Noah, events manager." "I know," she said, returning to her page. That unsettled me more than it should have. I stood there like an idiot until she sighed and marked her place with one finger. "You look like a man who has a question." My voice betrayed me. "I wanted to make sure you were all right." Her gaze stayed on me long enough to make the lobby feel too warm. "That's kind," she said, "and unnecessary." She went back to reading. I should have left again. Instead, I noticed her coffee on the side table, untouched and cold. Without thinking, I picked it up. "Can I bring you a fresh one?" She looked up slowly this time, measuring something. "You always volunteer for difficult jobs, Noah. Only the ones no one else wants." The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. "Black," she said. When I returned, she'd removed her glasses and was staring into the fire. I set the cup down carefully. "Our machine burns it," I said. "But this one's less terrible." She nuffed then, quietly, unexpectedly. It changed her whole face. "Thank you." Our fingers touched when she took the cup. Nothing dramatic. Barely a second. But she looked at my hand after. Then at me. And when I walked away, I could feel that glance between my shoulder blades all the way to the elevator, where I stood pretending to check messages while wondering why a stranger's silence had suddenly become the loudest thing in my life. I saw her again 4 days later in the hotel library, though calling it a library was generous. It was a narrow room off the lobby with dark shelves full of books no one borrowed, and chairs chose more for appearance than comfort. Guests came there to be photographed reading. Elena was alone at the long walnut table, papers spread around her in uneven stacks, a laptop open, phone face down beside it. Rain tapped the windows in thin, impatient lines. She had tied her hair back this time. Those strands kept slipping loose near her temples. I should have left her alone. Instead, I walked in carrying a tray of coffee meant for a board meeting upstairs. "You know this room closes for dramatic women in distress afternoon," I said. She didn't look up. "Then you'd better arrest me quickly." Her voice was dry, but slower than usual. "Tired." I set one cup beside her. "Collateral damage." "I didn't order anything." "You rarely do." That got her attention. She lifted her eyes to me, studying my face like I'd changed since last week. Then she wrapped both hands around the cup, not drinking yet, just letting the heat reach her fingers. Her hands were elegant, but not delicate. Veins faint beneath the skin, a small scar near the thumb, nails short and clean. Hands that signed checks, turned pages, opened doors for herself. "You notice too much," she said. "Occupational hazard." "No." She shook her head once. "Personal one." I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed standing there like a fool again. She rescued me by gesturing to the chair across from her. "Sit down for 30 seconds. Then go be useful somewhere else." I sat. The papers in front of her were contracts, notes, venue sketches, guest lists, charity gala planning. Her handwriting leaned hard to the right. "You're organizing this yourself?" I asked. "I'm correcting what other people call organizing." I smiled. She didn't, but I saw the effort of one almost happen. Outside, thunder rolled low over the city. She finally took a sip of coffee and winced. "Still terrible." I said less terrible. "That was your first honest statement." There it was again, that laugh trying to get out of her. Smaller this time, but real. Then her phone lit up against the table. "Daniel." She looked at the screen until it stopped ringing. "You're not answering." I asked before I could stop myself. She leaned back. "You ask questions as if they belong to you." "Sorry." "No," she said quietly. "Don't apologize for being direct. It's rare." She turned the phone over so the screen faced down again, but not before I saw 3 missed calls. For the first time since I'd met her, she seemed unsure where to place her hands. One moved to her throat. The other pressed flat against the table. "I hate ringing phones," she said. It sounded like it meant something older than today. The room went still around us. Without thinking, I reached across the table and slid the vibrating phone farther away from her. She stared at my hand, then at me. "You really are reckless," she murmured. "Sometimes." "Noah." My name in her mouth was soft and dangerous. "Do you know what people become when they're lonely long enough?" I shook my head. "Excellent actors." She stood too quickly, gathering papers into a crooked stack. A page slipped to the floor. I bent to pick it up at the same time she did. Our heads nearly collided. We both stopped there, inches apart, crouched between the chair legs like conspirators. I noticed then how tired she looked. Not sleepy, worn thin at the edges. Neither of us moved. Her breath touched my cheek before she whispered, almost amused, almost warning me. "You should have stayed busy upstairs." It happened on a Tuesday night after the gala planning meeting collapsed into arguments and expensive smiles by 11. The ballroom was empty except for half-cleared glasses, wrinkled linen, and me stacking abandoned folders into neat piles no one would appreciate. Outside, rain pressed against the tall windows in steady sheets, turning the city into blurred lights and silver streaks. I heard her heels before I saw her. Elena stepped through the side doors carrying 2 garment bags over one shoulder and irritation like a second coat. "You're still here," she said. "So are you." I asked first. She looked exhausted. Not fragile, never that, but stripped down to the version of herself no guests ever saw. Hair loosened, lipstick gone, one earring missing. There was a small red mark on her collarbone where a necklace must have rubbed all evening. I took the garment bags from her before she could protest. "You don't work for me," she said. "Tonight, I barely work for the hotel." That almost smile again. We moved through the dim ballroom together, collecting forgotten things. Place cards, chargers, a shawl someone wealthy would call sentimental by morning. The room felt larger with only the 2 of us inside it. At one point, she climbed onto a chair to reach flowers woven around a lighting stand. "You're going to fall," I said. "I'm not." "You say that with no evidence." She reached higher anyway. The chair wobbled once. I was beside her before either of us thought about it, hands at her waist to steady her. Everything stopped. Not the rain, not the air system humming overhead. Just us. Her body went still under my hands. Mine should have moved immediately. They didn't. She looked down at me from that ridiculous throne of banquet furniture, breath caught halfway in her chest. Noah. My name again. Softer now. I let go at once and stepped back. She climbed down carefully, smoothing her dress though it didn't need smoothing. Thank you, she said. You're welcome. Both of us sounded unlike ourselves. Her phone rang. She closed her eyes before checking it. Daniel. Answer it. I said, because it was the right thing to say. You sound disappointed. I sound practical. You're a poor liar. She answered on the fourth ring and walked toward the windows, speaking quietly. I tried not to listen. Failed anyway. No, I'm still at the hotel. Because things need doing. No, your mother isn't my responsibility tonight. Daniel. The way she said his name held years inside it. Silence. Then, lower. I didn't embarrass you. I embarrassed the story you tell about yourself. She hung up and stood there with the phone in her hand, staring at her reflection in the rain-dark glass. I kept folding tablecloths that were already folded. When she came back, she was composed again. Too composed. Would you like a drink? I asked. At midnight in an empty ballroom with a younger man. That sounds like the start of gossip. No one's here. You are. I poured 2 waters instead. We sat on the edge of the small stage where the band had played earlier, our shoulders not touching, our knees almost. She drank slowly. Do you always rescue women from chairs in bad marriages? She asked. Only on weekdays. That made her laugh, then cover her mouth as if laughter were private property. I wanted to ask if she was happy. I wanted to ask if she'd ever been. Instead I said, you don't have to answer his calls immediately. She stared at the bottle in her hands. Some habits survive love. The room went very quiet. She turned to me then, close enough that I could see the faint smudge of mascara at one eye. Tell me something reckless, she said. I should have stood up. I should have walked away. Instead I leaned in just enough to feel her breath change. And then the ballroom doors opened. The ballroom doors opened, and both of us moved apart so quickly it felt practiced. It was only Marco from night maintenance, pushing in a ladder and muttering apologies when he saw us on the stage. Didn't know anyone was still here. No problem, I said too fast. Elena stood, smoothing her dress again. We were leaving. We weren't. Marco nodded, unconvinced, and began replacing a light bulb near the back wall with all the subtlety of a witness. Elena picked up her bag. I gathered the empty bottles. We walked out separately, then found ourselves side by side again in the corridor because neither of us had chosen a direction. The hallway was narrow and dim, lined with framed black and white photos of the hotel from a century ago. Dead people smiling in formal clothes. Elevator? I asked. Stairs? Of course. We took the service stairwell. Concrete walls, fluorescent light, the smell of detergent and wet coats. Her heels clicked on each step, measured and sharp. On the third landing, she stopped. I nearly walked into her. What? I asked. She didn't answer. She just leaned one hand against the rail and looked down at the floors below us as if they might explain something. You can go, she said. I know. You should. I know that too. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. When she turned, her face looked suddenly unguarded. Not softer, just tired of carrying itself. What are we doing? She asked. The question landed between us harder than shouting would have. I opened my mouth, closed it. She nodded like that was answer enough. This, she said, gesturing lightly between us. These conversations. The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. The way I wait in rooms I don't need to be in. I'm not making you wait anywhere. No, she said quietly. That's the problem. Rainwater dripped from the hem of her coat onto the concrete floor. I took one step closer without meaning to. You're married, I said. Yes. You love him. She held my gaze so long I regretted asking. That's a younger person's question. I looked away first. She continued, voice low and steady. Love can remain after usefulness is gone. After kindness is gone. After respect leaves by the side door. The stairwell hummed with old electricity. I don't want to be part of whatever this is, I said, though even to me it sounded incomplete. Noah. She said my name like she was setting something fragile down. Neither do I. But neither of us moved. Her hand tightened on the railing. Mine stayed useless at my side. I liked who I was before you noticed me, she said. I frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does to women my age. She looked past me then, toward the closed stairwell door above us. You see me as if nothing has expired, she said. Do you know how dangerous that is? I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I saw the tiredness, the anger, the damage, the sharp edges she used like tools, that those were the reasons I couldn't look away. Instead, I said nothing. She stepped around me, then paused one stair above. When she spoke again, her voice was barely more than breath. If you touch me now, she said, staring straight ahead, I won't know how to forgive either of us. I didn't touch her. That became its own kind of touch. She walked up the stairs without turning back, and I stayed on the landing long after the sound of her heels disappeared. The next morning I called in sick for the first time in years, and spent half the day staring at my kitchen wall like it had insulted me. When I returned to the hotel the following evening, Elena wasn't in the lobby, or the library, or the cafe where she sometimes sat pretending to read while watching people pass. 3 days went by. On the fourth, housekeeping called down to events because a guest in Suite 814 wanted help with a jammed printer, and the regular maintenance man smells like cigarettes. I knew before they said the room number. She opened the door in socks and an oversized white shirt, sleeves rolled twice. No makeup, hair pinned badly with a pencil. The room behind her was a mess of folders, open luggage, and room service trays. You look terrible, she said. You vanished. She blinked once, then stepped aside. That too. I fixed the printer because it only needed paper aligned properly, which felt insulting to both of us. She stood by the desk sorting documents, pretending not to watch me. There was a framed photograph turned face down beside the lamp. When I reached to move the printer tray, my sleeve caught it. The photo slid and landed image up on the carpet. A young man smiled from a beach somewhere, sun in his eyes, one arm around a woman who looked like Elena 20 years earlier. Younger, brighter, barefoot. The resemblance was immediate and strange. The man in the photo looked enough like me to make my stomach tighten. Same dark hair, same jawline, same careless smile I'd grown out of. I bent to pick it up, but she got there first. For the first time since I'd known her, her hands shook openly. I'm sorry, I said. It's fine. It wasn't. She sat on the edge of the bed, photo in her lap, thumb pressed over the glass. My brother, she said. I stayed standing. He was 27 when he died. She gave a small laugh that sounded like something breaking quietly. You're 26, aren't you? I nodded. Car accident. Rain. A man who thought he could answer a text at a red light. The room went very still. I haven't thought of him this much in years, she said. Then you walked into a lobby carrying bad coffee. I didn't know where to put my hands. You remind me of him. I asked carefully. No. She looked up at me, eyes tired and direct. That would be simpler. She set the frame beside her. You remind me of the version of life that existed before grief moved in. I sat in the chair across from her because my knees suddenly felt unreliable. She spoke toward the window. After he died, everyone became delicate with me, then impatient with me, then bored of it. Daniel was kind during the bored part. She smiled without warmth. People often mistake timing for love. I wanted to say something wise, something worthy. Instead, do you still miss him every day? She considered it. No, she said. Some days I miss the person I was when he was alive. That hit harder than anything else. The printer word behind me suddenly fixed, spitting pages no one reached for. She stood, crossed the room, and took the papers from the tray. When she passed me, her fingers brushed the back of my shoulder lightly, absent-mindedly, as if I were familiar. Then she stopped at the door and said, almost to herself, You were never the danger I thought you were. After that, something changed because pretending became too expensive. We didn't become reckless. If anything, we became careful in new ways. She stopped hiding in corners of the hotel. I stopped inventing reasons to pass through the lobby. We met plainly now, which somehow felt more intimate than secrecy ever could have. Coffee in the mornings when her meetings ran early. 10 minutes in the library between calls. Short walks under the awning when rain came through the city. We spoke about ordinary things first. Books, terrible guests, my mother's habit of mailing me spices I never used, the fact that she hated orchids because they looked arrogant. Then the less ordinary things arrived on their own. She told me Daniel had moved into the guest room 2 years ago and never really moved back. I told her my father left so quietly we only noticed because the house became easier to breathe in. She laughed at that, then apologized for laughing, then laughed harder. Some evenings we said almost nothing. Those were the worst and best ones. One Friday, she asked if I could help carry boxes to a storage room on the hotel's top floor. Decorations from old events, dusty centerpieces, forgotten signage. It was an excuse so transparent we both respected it. The storage room overlooked the river through one high window. Sunset had turned the glass amber. Dust floated in the light like slow snow. We set the boxes down. Neither of us hurried to leave. "You're good at silence now," she said. "I had a strong teacher. I charged too much. You're worth it." She looked away immediately, and I hated myself for saying something that sounded practiced. But when she spoke again, her voice was soft. That's the sort of sentence women remember for years when they shouldn't. I meant it. "I know." The room settled around us. She walked to the window and stood with her arms folded, watching traffic move far below. "I asked Daniel for a separation this morning." I felt the floor tilt slightly beneath me. "Because of me?" She turned sharply. "No." Then gentler. "Not because of you." I nodded once. "I asked because I've been absent from my own life for too long." She studied my face. "You were just the first person who made that obvious." There was nothing triumphant in hearing it. Only sadness. Relief. Responsibility. "What happens now?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "That depends how childish you are." "Moderately." Dangerous answer. I moved beside her at the window. Not touching. Close enough to feel the warmth of her arm through fabric. Below us, headlights threaded across the bridge in patient lines. "I can't be your rescue story," I said. "I'd hate you for trying." "I'm serious." "So am I." She exhaled slowly. "Noah, I don't need saving. I need honesty, including the kind that disappoints me." I let that sit between us. Then I offered my hand. Palm up. Nothing more dramatic than that. She stared at it for a moment like it was a question in a language she used to know. Then she placed her hand in mine. No squeezing. No trembling music in the background. Just skin meeting skin, warm and certain. We stood there until the light thinned and the city below became mostly windows. After a while, she leaned her forehead briefly against my shoulder, as if testing whether rest was still possible. Neither of us spoke. When she finally lifted her head, she didn't let go of my hand. "Come downstairs with me," she said. And this time we did. It's been 14 months since the night we stood in that storage room holding hands like two people trying not to ruin a good thing by naming it too quickly. I don't work at the Grand Marlowe anymore. That chapter ended the way most real chapters do, without dramatic music. I took a better position managing a smaller boutique hotel across town. Less marble, fewer lies, better coffee. Elena said my standards had finally matured. She doesn't stay in hotel suites now unless she has to. She rented an apartment with tall windows and terrible plumbing. The kind of place that asks for patience. She says it reminds her that beautiful things often need maintenance. I told her that sounded suspiciously like something I'd say. She told me not to get smug. Her separation became a divorce 6 months after that evening. Quietly handled. No war. No spectacle. Just paperwork catching up to truths that had lived in the house for years. People always expect the dramatic version when they hear stories like ours. They imagine stolen nights, slammed doors, grand confessions in the rain. Mostly, it was smaller than that. It was learning how she takes tea when she can't sleep. It was her learning I go silent when I'm worried, not angry. It was the first time she left a toothbrush at my place and then laughed at herself for blushing. It was me realizing love is less about being chosen and more about being known accurately. Then stayed with anyway. We did things slowly, not because we were wise, but because we'd both seen what happens when loneliness wears the mask of urgency. There were awkward parts too. I met friends who looked at me like a phase. She met my brother, who asked if she knew any actresses from the 90s. We fought once in a grocery store over whether avocados should be squeezed before buying them. She was wrong, but carries herself like a woman accustomed to historical revision. And yes, sometimes the age difference still enters the room before we do. A waiter calls me sir and her ma'am, and we laugh for 20 minutes afterward. A stranger mistakes me for her son, and I spend the rest of dinner pretending to need allowance money. But the things that mattered most got quieter with time. She no longer flinches when her phone rings. I no longer confuse attention with affection. She sleeps better. I listen better. Some nights we sit on her balcony with blankets over our legs and say almost nothing while the city argues below us. Those silences would have terrified the younger version of me. Now they feel earned. I used to think love arrived like lightning. Loud, immediate, impossible to miss. What I learned is that sometimes it arrives like someone opening a door in a room you'd forgotten was airless. And sometimes the bravest thing two people can do is not rush inside. Last week, I found her reading by the window with her glasses low on her nose, sunlight across the page exactly the way I first saw her in that lobby. I asked what she was smiling at. Without looking up, she said, "You still make terrible coffee. Some things improve. Some things don't need to." If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?